न्यूज़ इंडिया खबर नज़रिया और असर के साथ आज मैं यहाँ दिल्ली विधानसभा में हूँ और यहाँ पे एक मीटिंग चली। ये मीटिंग थी पीस एंड हार्मनी कमेटी की तरफ से, जहाँ पे अध्यक्षता की उस कमेटी की एमएलए राघव चड्ढा जी ने। इस कमेटी में उन्होंने फेसबुक से आए हुए प्रतिनिधियों से बातचीत की और उनसे जवाब मांगा। आइए देखते हैं कि क्या हुआ उस कमेटी में।
Responsibility. I asked this question because the members of this committee had seen a video of your global CEO post the Delhi riots, and when he was referring to a particular video that was is alleged to have triggered those riots. So it is in that context that the committee wanted to know, how aware and cognizant is the global CEO of the happenings in Delhi, and how his platform, his brainchild, his entity has been used knowingly or unknowingly to further communal tension and deepen the fault lines that exist. Now, the Honorable Supreme Court in its judgment had graciously acknowledged the complexity of communal tensions and their wide-ranging ramifications. And it is in this context that this committee would like to know, has Facebook India defined hate speech in the Indian context?
Respected Chair, hate speech falls into one of the categories in our community standards. We do have definitions around it. I'm happy to share. In fact, I'm carrying some of our safety documents here, which I can leave behind with you, and also point you to the community standards. Hate speech definition is very much there. But as you understand, platforms like ours have to work on complex issues which have to balance both free speech and safety privacy safety at the same time. So it is very difficult to say that the definition is always going to be perfect. It is always ever evolving. For example, in India, when we started work and over the years, we realized, for example, caste could be a factor based on which hate speech could be put out. And it is basis the inputs from civil society organizations in India. We evolved the hate speech definition to include caste slurs in that as well. So my limited point is that while yes, there is a classification of hate speech which takes into account local factors, but our community standards are a global document to make sure that we are able to function that, make it function in every jurisdiction.
So you have defined hate speech in the
right.
Indian context in that document.
Hate speech is defined in the community standards. I leave it to your judgment whether it takes care of the Indian context or not. I gave a small example where a specific Indian
whether
context.
It takes care of the Indian context or not is a separate debate. Have you specifically defined hate speech for India? It could be a narrow definition, it could be an exhaustive definition. But has Facebook India or Facebook INC defined hate speech qua India?
Respected Chairperson, our community standards is a global document. We believe hate speech definitions apply uniformly across the world. And whenever there are local considerations, we would take that into account, as I just gave a specific example. Beyond that, when hate speech issues, when in our consultation with civil society organizations are put across to us, we do take those inputs on board, not just through our definitions, which are ever evolving, but also through the content policies that we have to make sure that we are not missing anything really big on any
I'm
country.
sorry, I'm not able to understand. It's a simple yes or no. Is there a specific definition of hate speech in the Indian context? It's a yes. I understand there are community standards. I also understand that, it could not be a static exercise. It keeps on evolving. All that is very well. But do you have a specific definition of hate speech for India?
The hate speech definition in the community standards is applicable to India as well.
So there is a specific definition.
Hate speech is a part of our community standards, and those definitions apply to
No,
India.
there is, Mr. Tukral. What could be hate speech in the US may not be hate speech in India, right? It is in that context that I'm asking, is there a specific definition of hate speech for India?
We believe the hate speech definition that we have in the community standards is
For all jurisdictions?
Is ensuring that it takes care of the issues in India, sir. I'm happy to share it with you, and I'll leave it to the committee's judgment. But we believe the hate speech definition that we have.
Okay. From your answer, is my understanding correct that you have one comprehensive definition of hate speech that applies to all jurisdictions?
To the best of my understanding, the way our hate speech definitions work It is used as a part of our community standards, and I think the concerns that you're raising for a country like India, the hate speech definition in the community standards would cover that.
No. Hate speech you have defined on the basis of Indian laws or on the basis of global laws.
Correct.
Respected member, as I said, we respect local laws. We do take into account all the issues pertaining to.
It is specifically applicable in India.
It is my understanding that the way hate speech definitions in our community standards are, it does take.
Applicable only in India, not globally.
It is definitely in line and applicable as far as Indian laws are concerned as well.
See, Mr. Thukral.
Yes, sir.
Sure.
So, no, please go ahead, sir.
See, community standards is a list of maybe a series of steps that kick in once an objectionable content is floated on your platform, or in order to prevent any such objectionable content to be published on your platform. We are not on content, we're not on community standards, we're not also on content. We're on merely the definition of hate speech in the Indian context. It's a yes or no. Has Facebook India defined hate speech in the Indian context? Or is there a global definition which applies to all jurisdiction, may not necessarily be for the Indian jurisdiction?
Respected Chairperson, given that you're not satisfied with my answer, let me step back and kind of understand a little bit more of when you say the definition of hate speech in India. If you can point out there is a hate speech definition that we should look at, we will definitely take that on board, which pertains to India. There are certain provisions in the Indian law that we obviously would be mindful of and we respect. But if I look at hate speech in general, hate speech exists in the real world. So we can only take into account factors that exist in the real world, because what happens in the real world is what is playing out. So when we write our policies, we ensure that we take inputs and expertise of everyone who's a part of the civil society. And when there are gaps which are pointed out to us, that is how our policies evolve. When I gave an example of, there was a time when caste was not in our hate speech definition. There was a time like that. But we realized that in the case of India, we could not afford to do that. And that is how the hate speech definition evolved. So, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, the way we function, our hate speech criteria or factors take into account local conditions. And as far as India is concerned, if I look at our track record of the way content is shared on our platform or the enforcement that we do, if there are any glaring gaps, it would definitely show up and we would evolve with that as well.
Mr. Thukral, we understand that the definition of hate speech is not a static process. You cannot define it and be fully satisfied with it, right? It's a very comprehensive exercise. The committee is very cognizant of that. We also understand that it's an evolving process. We also understand that it has to be as per the applicable laws in the country. And we also understand your inclination and your willingness to take certain suggestions that this committee may recommend into account and further evolve its definition, right? My limited question again is, and the committee would urge you to respond in a simple yes or no, is there a specific and a standalone individual definition of hate speech for India, for the Indian jurisdiction alone?
Respected Chair, respectfully, let me say that, let me refrain any further comment, given that a lot of these pertain to due diligence requirements of our company under the IT Act. I have explained how we work. I mean, I don't think I'm able to add further value to your question, but you yourself admitted there is no static definition of hate speech. That's the point I was trying to make. We pick up signals. We look at what is happening on ground, and we believe the way our platform is structured, the community standards are applicable globally. And our definition of hate speech is quite comprehensive. That is exactly the reason why we have been able to act on hate speech. But anything beyond that, let me exercise my right of not saying anything further.
It is worrying, Mr. Thukral, it is worrying that there is no static definition.
No, one more thing, Mr. Thukral. Hate speech, I think, is not defined under IT Act. Right? Hate speech is not defined under IPC. Okay? Then you are saying our hate speech definition is based upon Indian laws. Which law was consulted by you before making hate speech as a defined aspect in community standard?
Respected member, again, with due respect, this falls in the due diligence requirements of the IT Act. I would like to exercise my right not to comment further as per the Supreme Court judgment.
No, it means your hate speech concept is applicable globally and it is not specifically applicable to India. Because your definition is vague and ambiguous. It is not covering all the ingredients of hate speech which is being practiced in India in different laws, not specifically, it is not defined specifically anywhere. We are having some judgments of the Supreme Court, High Court, and we are having some particular sections in Indian Penal Code on which we get the information, we get the data that this can be a hate speech. But you have defined from on what basis of Indian laws? Which law was consulted by you or which law was considered by you while defining hate speech?
Respected member, as I said, given that some of the questions that you're asking pertain to due diligence requirements, allow me the right to refuse answering anything further on that, as per the Supreme Court judgment.
Mr. Thukral, is it? One more question the honourable member has.
Mr. Thukral, it's a question of governance, right? If anywhere, any part in the city, any riot erupts, it affects the governance. You said we are not supposed to inform the law enforcing agency about any particular rogue user. It means you are shirking your responsibility and you are not taking any responsibility of all these things in any manner.
So is there a question?
Yes, my question is that why don't you take responsibility for all these things?
So I'm sitting right in front of you. I think we have talked about taking responsibility. We are appearing in front of the committee, and we absolutely respect the mandate of the committee. Just for the record, respected member, I did not say we do not cooperate with law enforcement agency. To the contrary, I said there are issues on which we have a very structured cooperation mechanism with law enforcement, including working with them to solve for very serious crimes. So I just wanted to make sure of that. You raise a very, very important issue about governance. You also raise an issue about us not respecting local law. We absolutely respect local law. We do absolutely respect the requirements which lead to better governance. And if you allow me a quick minute, while I absolutely recognize, and as I said, as all our global leadership as well as leadership in India, we reflect on these issues all the time. These are complex challenges. These cannot be solved. But to say or to paint a picture that this is the whole and rest doesn't matter, if I can indicate to you that we also end up empowering many, many small businesses, connecting many, many communities. For example, during COVID, one of the biggest examples we saw was people trying to connect for blood, oxygen cylinders, hospital beds. It is through the use of our platform that they have achieved that. We partnered with governments. We partnered with the Delhi government during COVID as well. So we feel that our platforms are also used for a lot more good than just bad. Yes, the bad is a problem. We take responsibility of it. But it looks as if that it's the bad which is only happening on the platform. That is not correct.
No, nobody is saying that.
Yeah. So I just wanted to...
That is your bright space. That is your bright part. Nobody, we admit that. But there are certain things where the Facebook is reluctant in taking action.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
No, please answer if you'd like to.
Respected Chair and respected member, we are not at all reluctant. As I said, we are here. If I can talk through numbers, if you allow me, through investments of over $13 billion, $5 billion just this year on safety and security, 40,000 people, including 15,000 on content moderation, coverage of 70 languages, 20 languages in India for content moderation. I don't think that's a sign of reluctance. You may call it that's an imperfect solution, but so is the real world. The fact is we are taking very, very serious steps in solving for these issues, and we are absolutely mindful of it. It doesn't... Please don't assume that I sleep in peace when you say there is hate on our platform. We don't. None of our officials do. And there is zero tolerance. The fact is, what can we do more? Of course. That is exactly why I'm here. And it's a part of being transparent in front of you, taking responsibility, and trying to share ideas and solutions and seek ideas from you as well.
Right. So, Mr. Thukral, you mentioned that there are certain observations or the paragraphs that the Honorable Supreme Court has stated in its judgment that prevent you from answering these questions. Could you be specific and point out which para or which part of the Supreme Court's judgment you're referring to?
Yeah. With your permission, may
Yes,
I seek my colleague to respond?
Sure,
to that?
sure, please.
The mic on.
Honorable Chairman, this is with specific reference to, and I'm sorry, I'm not sure which is the version of the Honorable Court's judgment that you're relying on, but this would be the SCC version that I'm drawing reference to. So that would be with reference to paras 204, besides others, of course, but I would draw attention to 204 specifically, 227 and 228. And with your permission, I would be
Please
happy
read
to
it out. Yes.
Ji. The Honorable Court goes on to say, after extensive deliberation on the various contentions, that we are also of the view that the recourse to entries 1 and 2 of List 3 cannot be said to include what has been excluded from the powers of List 2, and it clarifies entries 1, 2, and 18. Similarly, entry 45 of List 3 relate to inquiries would again not permit the Assembly, with due deference, or the committee to inquire into the aspects of public order or police functions. And then it goes on to say that a law and order situation arose is not disputed by anyone, and that this law and order issue related to communal rights also cannot be seriously disputed. That the Assembly cannot deal with the issue of law and order and police is also quite clear, and that was specifically para 204. But sir, for para 227, I would wish to seek your permission to continue. We are of the view that in any eventuality, as speculative as it may be, if the committee seeks to traverse the path relating to the excluded entries, i.e. law and order and police, any representative of Facebook who would appear before the committee would be well within their right to refuse to answer the query, and such an approach cannot be taken amiss with possibility of inviting privilege proceedings. 228 para, sir, goes on to state that the Assembly admittedly does not have power to legislate on aspects of law and order and police in view of entries 1 and 2 of List 2 in the 7th schedule inter alia being excluded. Further, regulation of intermediaries is also subject matter covered by the IT Act. So these are the three specifics, but I can invite your kind attention to the other provisions as well, just for your convenience, sir.
So in para 227, the Honorable Supreme Court says, we thus opine that this aspect has to be kept in mind by the committee so as to not vitiate future proceedings and give rise to another challenge. We are of the view that in any eventuality, as speculative as it may be, if the committee seeks to traverse the path relating to the excluded entries, that is law and order and police, any representative of Facebook who would appear before the committee would be well within their right to refuse to answer the query, and such an approach cannot be taken amiss with the possibility of inviting privileged proceedings. It is a delicate balance to follow, and we do not seek to give an excuse to the representative of the petitioners to not answer questions and frustrate the proceedings before the committee qua the petitioners. In para 210, the Supreme Court says the divergent contentions led us to conclude that the committee can trace its legitimacy to several entries in List 2 and 3 without encroaching upon the excluded fields of public order, police, to undertake a concerted effort. Facebook cannot excuse themselves from appearing pursuant to new summons. Areas which are not otherwise available to the legislature for legislative exercise may, however, be legitimately available to a committee for its deliberations. We are merely deliberating on these issues, and I have only asked you to submit and furnish certain data, help us understand the definition of hate speech. I hope you will appreciate that and if you have certainly gone through the terms of reference of this committee, for the committee to dive deep into this, we need a foundation of a definition. If we do not have a foundation of a definition, then it certainly prohibits us from proceeding. And it is deeply worrying for me as a chairman of the committee to note that there is no standalone individual definition of hate speech in the Indian context alone. The kind of impression that I've drawn from your responses is that there perhaps is a global definition, along with the community standards that you have given, but that definition as well as community standards apply to all jurisdiction. There is no India-specific jurisdiction from where you derive 40% of your users. And what may be hate speech in the US or in Australia or in the UK may not be hate speech in India. In fact, what may be hate speech in Pakistan may not be classified as hate speech in India. So therefore, a market that has 40% of your users, is there a hate speech definition or is there a standard definition that you have that is applicable to all jurisdictions? That was the limited point that we were trying to make. I'll go forward with this line of questioning and ask you, is there any attempt by Facebook to bring its definition in line with the definition of hate speech in respective jurisdictions in which it operates?
Thank you, respected Chair. Thanks for your question. As I said, community standards is a ever-evolving process, and like you admitted, your respected colleague also informed me, there is no static definition of hate speech even from the country perspective, but we do take into account local factors. And yes, I mean, it is an evolving process. If there are inputs that we receive which identify gaps, we would look at it. But again, the way hate speech definitions have evolved in the real world as well, if you look at it, and I'm not going to use a legal lens alone here, the fact is our community standards is a reflection of the local conditions, local laws as well. And if and when certain situations are brought to our notice, as I said, we review our policies all the time. If there's anything very specific, we would take into account. But I'm also happy to share with you our definitions for you to examine, and if you feel any gaps. But as I said, we are a global platform. We have to make sure that we are able to function in every jurisdiction. The way we have functioned in India, respected Chairperson, is we feel that we haven't seen anything completely divergent, at least the way you may be apprehending. But again, as I said, we are open to scrutiny and it's fair, and we are happy to take any inputs.
It is certainly an evolving process. In fact, all the honorable members who are lawmakers, when we also legislate, we understand that a statute that we are going to debate on, pass and enact is a statute that will be valid on that, or that would be static for that very day. But subsequent to that, it will obviously change. The Indian Penal Code is a textbook example of such an exercise. It has evolved over the years. But as on today, there is a definition of, say, defamation. There is a definition of a crime called rape. There is a definition of a crime called murder in the Indian Penal Code. It could, you can certainly say that it's an evolving process, and it will forever be an evolving process. Our point was limited to this very day, as on this very day, or in the month of Feb 2020, when the communal violence happened in the city. Was there a definition of hate speech in your books? It could merely be a theoretical exercise, but was there a definition of hate speech as far as Facebook India is concerned?
I'm happy to share the document with you. It's a public document. Happy for you to look at it, and I'm happy to share the URL with you.
What are the categories of posts which have their reach expanded or reduced?
Sorry, I wouldn't understand that question.
The category of posts that have their reach reduced or expanded by Facebook.
Respected Chair, I can talk about where we take action to curb the spread. I would not be aware of what leads to a growth, but as far as the reduction is basis the kind of signals we get. For example, if there are violations, obviously that post would go down, but there are certain pieces of content where Facebook cannot be the arbiter of truth, where we rely on fact-checking partners. Once it has been rated false or out of context by fact-checkers, the distribution of such content is reduced for sure. So, and then there are other categories, for example, repeat violators, etc., where those kind of posts can get reduced in their distribution. So I can share with you what we do in terms of curbing the spread of misinformation, removal of hate speech, of course, but curbing the spread of misinformation is largely due to the reliance of, one, third-party fact-checking partners, and two, civil society organizations who we work with, who sometimes act as better guides and judges in different parts of the country where we may not have the expertise to take a judgment call. We rely on their judgment on that.
The Honorable Supreme Court had observed in his judgment in para 212 that given the pervasive impact of the riots, the committee could legitimately attend to grievances encompassing varied elements of public life. In pursuance of that, we would like to ask you, Mr. Tukral, what are Facebook India's policies? What are Facebook India's policies on hate speech, fake news, and organized disinformation campaigns? Hate speech, fake news, and organized disinformation campaigns.
Thank you, respected Chair. Again, we are a global platform. Our policies are applicable, but you talk about three specific areas. I don't recollect the exact text of the hate speech definition, but there is a hate speech definition and it's a public document. Happy to share that with you. So we do have defined criteria, what qualifies as hate speech, what not. And once that content is decided to be violative of our community standard, we would remove that content from the platform. You talk about disinformation. As I just said, we do not want to be the arbiter of truth, where some pieces of content can be, if I may say, contentious, true or false, we don't know. We don't have the expertise. We are not the judge. We rely on fact-checking partners. In India, for example, we have 10 fact-checking partners covering 11 languages, with the reliance of who we provide an interstitial. So we inform the user that this piece of content has been fact-checked by a fact-checker, and kind of inform them more about related articles so that they are not encouraged to share it further. And as far as organized networks of disinformation, as you would know, you would have read in the public sphere, we have various policies around organized behavior as well, and if we find violations of that protocol, we would take action against those accounts as well.
What are the types of actions that you take?
So there is this protocol which is in the public domain called coordinated inauthentic behavior, whereby if we receive signals that somebody is setting up multiple accounts, for example, to deceive users by pretending to be somebody else and trying to run a information campaign, our team of cybersecurity experts will pick up those signals, and we would end up removing those networks from the platform.
Okay, that's one action. What are other actions that you take?
That is one such example, as I said. Most of our action would pertain to, as I said, there is proactive removal basis our machine learning tools, where we use classifiers to understand hate speech and then remove that. Second is via the community standards. Third is, as I said, is about coordinated inauthentic behavior. Fourth is around misinformation.
What around misinformation?
With the reliance of third-party fact-checking partners, as I said.
Okay.
And then there are other things where people who spam, we have spam filters, etc., people who create fake accounts. For example, I don't remember the exact timeline, but we remove almost a billion fake accounts across the world on a monthly basis. But allow me to correct my statistic, but we have ways to remove fake accounts as well from the platform on an automated basis. These are accounts, even before they become active on the platform, we would remove it.
Whether you have a cogent fact-checking infrastructure for India alone, a fact-checking infrastructure.
So we don't own it. As I said, we are not the arbiters of truth, but we have 10 fact-checking partners in India. All of them are certified by the International Fact-Checking Network globally, and they cover 11 languages in the country. This is dedicated to India.
Only 11 languages. How many languages can Facebook host? Facebook India can host?
We cover 20 languages in the country right now.
So there are fact-checking infrastructure that is available with you, or you have access to only for 11 languages currently, but there are 20 languages in which Indians can log on to Facebook and function.
Yeah, but in those 20 languages,
as a platform.
Sorry, sir.
And use the services of Facebook as a platform in 20 languages.
Yeah, so the coverage of 20 languages is for content moderation, whereby we are able to act when something is reported in those languages. So we do have our own teams for content moderation when it comes to those 20 languages. When I talked about the fact-checking partners, respected Chair, it is about those who we rely as third-party fact-checking partners. And again, it has grown. For example, in 2019, there were only 2. There was no fact-checking concept in India in 2019. Over the years, we've supported and made sure that this ecosystem has grown to about 10 fact-checkers right now.
How many fact-checking entities were associated with you in the month of February 2020 when those incidents took place?
I can come back to you on the exact number, but surely it was in the range of 8 to 10. We've just gone up 8 to 9. We've just gone up to 10 recently.
Okay. And again, just to...
If you allow me to correct the exact statistic, but in the range of 8 to 9 for sure.
Okay. And just for our clarification once again, there are 20 languages in which a user can use the services of Facebook in India. But as far as fact-checking is concerned, Facebook currently has access to fact-checking third-party entities that operate in 11 languages alone.
That's right. Pardon my, if I may correct, 20 Indian languages where we have 24/7 coverage to ensure there is no problematic content. So in terms of if there is any community standard violation.
Correct.
In
I'm
any
not
of them.
fact-checking.
Yeah.
You have mentioned several buckets, right?
Yes.
Fact-checking is one bucket, misinformation is one bucket, community standard is one bucket.
That's
I
right.
am limiting my question to fact-checking, fake news.
That's right, 10.
10.
In 11 languages.
10 in 11 languages. Okay. What exactly is Facebook India now doing as far as strengthening its fact-checking infrastructure is concerned?
As I said, we rely on third-party fact checkers, so we can't go ahead and do it on our own. So we are ensuring that we support this ecosystem well, and it is pretty satisfying to see that this ecosystem has grown. So anyone who has an IFCN certification can apply to our fact-checking partnership, and we would onboard them basis them meeting certain criteria. So, and anybody is free to go and get IFCN certification.
What is the process that you undertake in order to tie up with a fact-checking entity?
Respected Chair, the first criteria is that they have to have IFCN certification. So IFCN is a global body which... IFCN, International Fact-Checking Network,
okay.
Based of the Poynter Institute in the US, and they certify fact-checkers across the world.
Okay.
And we feel that is a very good filter or a criteria to ensure that neutrality is maintained by those fact-checkers.
Okay. Are there any commercial understanding that you have with these fact-checking entities?
I do believe there is a element of partnership that we do, because they would have some sort of a incentive to ensure that fact-checking is done basis that.
Could you help
in
us
terms of the quantum?
Could you help us understand the commercial arrangement?
I don't run that work stream, so as I said, any further information can be shared basis applicable law, but I'm not the one who's running that operation.
Could you let us know?
Within your earlier bucket maybe, and where my statement, if you permit me, is as per applicable laws, if whatever I'm allowed to submit.
Everything that you have to submit and everything that you have to say is as per applicable laws
Perfect,
in the country,
yeah.
and in line with the Supreme
I
Court
respect
judgment. There is
that.
nothing that this committee will do which will not be as per the applicable laws in this country.
I appreciate
We are
that.
all lawmakers.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Have you had an audit, a third-party audit of any of these fact-checking entities ever?
I would not be aware, but I believe the respective teams have been discussing various ways to ensure there is greater transparency.
Okay. So could you help us also peruse a list of fact-checking exercises that were undertaken by these fact-checking partners that you have associated with from the 1st of Jan 2020 to end of April 2020?
Respected Chair, yeah, we'll add it to that list, as I said, but these fact checkers are independent. Actually, anybody can contact them. So it is up to them how they may want to respond. But as far as we are concerned, I can check with the relevant teams and come back to you.
If we connect with an independent fact checker sitting in Australia, they may not submit these documents to us, but since you have an arrangement with them, they'll be very happy to share that list with you. So therefore, if you could route it for us, that would be very, very helpful.
Respected Chair, sorry, one clarification. These fact checkers are based out of India. The 10 fact checkers in India.
But still, since you have a commercial
Okay,
arrangement with them, you have an understanding, there are contracts that have been written and signed, they would be certainly willing to share that information with you. And once you have that in your possession, which you may already have in your possession, you can certainly share it with us.
Moreover, they may not share the information with the third person.
Sorry, sir?
They may not share the information with any third person, fact-checking entity. If we approach them, they may refuse to share the information.
Yeah, I understand that, sir.
That's why you have to provide that.
As I shared with the committee chair.
How much time usually is taken by these fact-checking entity in completing the fact checks?
How much time?
They take, usually.
I'm not aware of that. I would not be. I mean, this is a specialized operation which is run, so I'm not aware of that. It's not run by my team.
Which team runs this operation?
There's a news partnerships team which looks at it.
News partnership
Yes.
team.
Yeah.
What is the composition of that team?
As I said, you're asking me for details of information which is not in the
Who heads that team in India? Is there a news partnership team for India?
Yes, there is.
A specific news partnership team for India?
That's right. That's correct.
Who is the head of that team?
I'm not sure I'm allowed to share any further details of employees if it is not in the public domain, so I'll have to check and I can share that with you basis that.
Are we given to understand that the name of the head of the news partnership team is not available in the
I'll have
public
to,
domain?
if you give me a, I
You
would
can
not
check
know.
with your colleague, yeah, that's fine.
I would not be aware if it is there in the public domain or not.
We'll make sure to check, sir, and are committed to disclosing in accordance with the
Applicable
lawful
laws.
processes.
Yes, yes,
Ji,
applicable laws.
that is the standard, with due deference.
So the Honorable Supreme Court had also acknowledged that the capital of this country can ill afford any repetition of the occurrence of the unprecedented Delhi riots that took place in Feb 2020. Significantly, during the Delhi riots, many incendiary and communally sensitive posts from India have got amplified on Facebook. What measures have been taken or have been carried out by Facebook India, in order to take down such posts, or remove such posts from your platform?
Respected Chair, when it comes to the specific instance that you're talking about, I would continue to exercise my right not to comment on that specific instance, but you raise a very important issue of what we do to remove problematic content. And let me, if you allow me a minute, let me go through 2 or 3 different ways. The first off, given that we have to solve this problem at scale, we rely on machine learning tools and algorithms, so which is where we feel that our enforcement or our action is actually leading to the drop in the prevalence of problematic content on our platform. As I said, the latest data shows that problematic content on our platform, or hate speech content on our platform, is down to 0.03%. In 10,000 pieces of content that you may come across in your newsfeed, you will have only 3 problematic pieces of content. That's one. 2, in terms of what we do to make sure that we have better skills and better ability to detect this content. It's an ongoing process. It's never a one-stop shop, and it is not perfect. Apart from this, we drive user awareness campaigns so that users get to know what they can report. Eventually, as I said, while a lot of it is reflection of what's happening in society, we want to make sure our users know how to report these problematic pieces of content on our platform, which is where I talked about the community standards. We also work with the fact-checking partners, and that your feedback well taken, that this needs to be grown in the country. And apart from that, at the end of the day, any issue which pertains to violation of law or real-world violence, we have a structured mechanism to work with law enforcement across the country, where we assist them based on valid legal orders to solve for issues or solve for serious crimes. So if you look at the any possible way which we could cover each of these problematic areas, we are putting a full throttle effort. Is it enough? Probably not. Should we do more? Absolutely yes. And is user safety our responsibility? Absolutely yes. So, but at the end of the day, if I may submit with due respect, it's also our collective responsibility. When I say collective, all our users, all of us put together to make sure that we don't share, and that is exactly why we inform users. If you're seeing a piece of problematic content, do not share. We've run campaigns as well to make sure that don't share problematic content on the platform.
Well, we certainly appreciate this generic answer, Mr. Tukral. My question was limited to the incident of communal violence that happened in Delhi in the month of Feb 2020.
Respected Chairperson, on that specific issue, I would exercise my right not to answer any question. It's a matter of law and order, also a matter of ongoing investigation.
Isn't it a matter
The
of
Honorable,
governance?
yes, Gunza, the Honorable Supreme Court, when a similar plea was taken by the petitioner in the court, the Honorable Supreme Court in para 212 had said, we are of the view that because of the pervasive impact of the riots, the committee could legitimately attend to such grievances encompassing various elements of public life. Thus, it would be entitled to receive information and deliberate on the same to examine their bearing on peace and harmony without transgressing into any fields reserved for the Union in the 7th schedule. This is not a court. We are not, you are not an accused. No evidence is being led. Nobody is being accused of anything. We are merely trying to get this information for us to understand as lawmakers, and the Legislative Committee of Delhi would love to understand how the incidents that took place, how these posts that were published on your platform impacted the peace and harmony of the NCT of Delhi. I am merely on this point, and the Supreme Court in the most recent judgment has again highlighted the powers and the competence of this committee.
I absolutely respect your mandate, respected Chair, and absolutely hold the Supreme Court judgment in high esteem. It is my belief that the issues that you refer to, or the specific instance, falls within the purview of law and order. And I also understand that the Supreme Court judgment allows me to exercise my right not to comment on this specific instance.
I am merely asking Mr. Tukral, were there any measures taken to remove those posts? And if yes, what were the measures taken by your entity? That's it. In the month of Feb 2020.
Absolutely. Respected Chair, we take measures all the time. I mean, it is, as I've been saying, that when it comes to problematic content on our platform, we take a series of measures. And the buckets that you refer to are the kind of ways we look at problematic content on the platform. Again, if I say there are multi-pronged efforts to do it. We do it in a combination of people, content moderation in terms of community standard violation. We look at processes based on process and products in terms of classifiers, machine learning tools whereby we are able to take action on these pieces of content. And then partnerships. As I said, we run a third-party fact-checking partnership so that this problematic content is removed. So we have a multi-pronged effort absolutely in place to take care of problematic content on the platform.
Even for the month of Feb 2020?
It is a continuous process. We never stop looking at hate speech or problematic content on the platform. It isn't like we shut down our services at night. It is a 24/7 operation.
Okay.
So that was an extraordinary situation in Delhi. In Feb 2020, did you take any prompt action at that time?
Respected member, if I may, once again, this is an issue pertaining to the law and order of the city, and I would like to exercise my right as per the Supreme Court judgment not to comment on that instance.
This may be an issue of governance also. This may be an issue of governance also, not simply law and order. We need a cooperation and transparency from your side in the fairness of the things. And every time you are saying, I reserve my right, that is your right. You can exercise that. But still, for transparency, for fairness, you should cooperate.
Respected member, I completely agree with you in trying to be transparent. I've been transparent about our processes, and whatever you have requested, as I shared with the respected chair with you, whatever is permitted within applicable law, we will definitely share as long as it is permitted. So I'm not shying away. I'm very much here. I'm happy to explain all the processes that are playing out through the year, through every day, every night. In the case of heightened tensions or in the case of real-world violence, obviously we have processes where we have dedicated teams which look at these instances. So I would respectfully disagree with the statement that I'm not cooperating. I think I am, but I'm sure we could do better. But I'm happy to share anything as per applicable law.
The honourable member has only said that you should answer all the questions, you shouldn't stonewall or claim your right to not answer these questions simply because this is not we are not prosecuting anyone. We have no adversarial beliefs or feelings towards
For the first time we are hearing that even recruitment process is a classified document.
As I said, respected member, happy to share whatever is in the public domain. Beyond that, I believe sharing of documents, I have to go by what is required of me by the law.
Okay, so Mr. Tukral, what are the kind of actions prior to removal that you take in respect of the posts that have been flagged as hateful, misinformation, fake news?
Respected Chair, we do have a process where when something is flagged and it is on the borderline where our hate speech experts are looking at something, we would reduce distribution of such content on our platform.
How? What are the steps that you take?
We would reduce distribution when something is flagged as problematic and it is under review. We would reduce distribution.
How do you reduce it? How is it reduced? Will people not be able to share that post after that?
I'm not an expert in how algorithms work, but I believe there are ways the algorithms can decide which post and what kind of reach and distribution a specific piece of content can have if it is problematic.
We understand that a post is published on the platform and it organically grows. We also understand that when the post is in violation of your community standards or has been classified as fake, inflammatory, etc., you remove the post. What we do not understand, and what we certainly wish to understand, is how is the distribution of a particular post reduced? What is the meaning of the phrase reduction in distribution?
Thanks for that clarification. Respected Chair, back in 2018, if you remember, we ran certain experiments where we figured out this issue of problematic content was arising again and again, and the onus was on our safety and integrity teams was to understand how to reduce the virality of some problematic content. Now, what I understand is algorithms are a set of tools that is used by everybody in the technology industry to ensure how a post is getting distributed. In 2018, when we ran this experiment, we wanted to make sure that friends and family are getting to see what was defined as meaningful interaction. So not to showcase if there was the experiment which was run led to the reduction of virality of videos, for example, in effect, reduction of engagement. And we still went ahead and did it. So at the end of the day, algorithms have the ability to determine the distribution of content on our platform, and our effort is to make sure you as a user get to have a transparent knowledge of how algorithms work. So for example, we want to give the ability to users to override algorithms, for example, build your own newsfeed rather than our systems pushing content to you. Or when we made the changes, we ensured that, let's say, political content or content which could rile up people, that goes down. So despite reduction in engagement, we went ahead and did that change. And eventually, also, to us, change of algorithm is something which is in line with what we see as a commercial objective. Our commercial objective is not to feed hate, because our proof, our examples show that we have led to a reduction in engagement by changing these algorithms. So there are ways which work. I'm not a technical expert. How algorithms work, maybe our engineers can explain, but I can tell you that the way we have adopted this approach is to make sure that safety does not go amiss while we make sure that people get to see meaningful content.
Can you share a document with this committee in order for us to understand how reduction in eyeballs takes place?
We do share a lot of reports with researchers and academics. A lot of them are in the public domain.
This very specific point.
Again, as I said, algorithms form the center stage of what our platforms do. Whatever is under applicable law, I'm happy to look at that and come back to you.
Of course, as per applicable law. You know, if something is considered to be fake or hateful or a piece of misinformation, why is removal of that content not the only option? Why would you want to reduce the virality of the content and not remove it altogether?
Respected Chairperson, this is a complex issue. I mean, one person's speech could have multiple implications for different kind of people. When you say misinformation, it's very difficult to determine, is what I understand. That is why we don't take a call. When we feel some piece of content is disputed, even on mere facts, we have seen people who speak in public, they put out certain commentary which they believe is true. It is disputed by another person saying it is not true. Facebook cannot be standing in judgment of that. So this is exactly the time when we bring in our third-party fact checkers who help us determine whether it is true or false. We believe we have taken the right approach of informing users. At the center of what we do is try to empower users to make the decision for themselves, especially on disputed facts, and that is how we function.
So, are we given to understand then when a particular post is disputed, as a matter of interim arrangement, there is a reduction in virality that kicks in?
That reference that I made specifically was related to hate speech content. In misinformation
hate speech, you can replace the word misinformation with hate speech.
With due respect, they are two different categories.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Misinformation may not lead to a problem.
Let's talk about hate speech.
Yeah. It is my understanding.
I stopped referring to hate speech because I didn't get a definition, an accurate definition from you.
Thank you. It is my understanding, respected Chair, that we have processes where when hate speech content which is not clearly violative of our platform policies, it's on the borderline, even at that time, during the course of determination, we would reduce the virality.
As an interim arrangement, the reduction of virality kicks in.
That's right.
And once you determine a particular post to be non-violative, you remove the reduction in virality feature. If you consider that to be in violation of your standards or your internal memos, etc., you remove the content altogether. Is my understanding correct?
Well, we would also, in borderline cases, we would also trust our civil society partners. We have trusted partners across the country who are members of civil society organizations who provide inputs to us to make a judgment as well. When, for example, we are not being able to make a judgment and we know it is maybe problematic and yet not violative. If you recollect, when I was explaining to your esteemed colleague, there are ways where we plug the gaps. When somebody says this is problematic and our policies are not determining that they are violating, we would rely on the judgment of such civil society partners.
Okay, and right. So since you rely on the judgment of these civil society people very often, how do you ensure that the views that these civil society people that you are associated with hold are not biased and are independent and have absolutely no sort of partiality attached to it?
Sure. Respected Chair, the trusted partners, when I refer to civil society organizations, we obviously can't reveal who all they are to ensure their safety, but they usually help us on hate speech related issues where it is not a question of bias. You know when a hate speech is hate speech, and if you are relying on their judgment, one would be able to make a determination. From what I have seen, our processes are pretty robust in making sure that we work with very, very credible partners in various parts of the country.
So when you know what is hate speech, why not remove it altogether?
Yeah, as I said, there are certain nuances sometimes, respected Chair, which we may not be able to pick up because of language nuances or certain dialect issues where we do not have the expertise.
Could you give us an example of something that is a borderline violative of your community standards and something that should not be removed from Facebook as per your internal sort of
two things,
rules and regulations?
Yeah, two things, respected Chair. If you permit, with due respect, that one, there are certain issues that you're asking me to share which fall within the purview of the due diligence requirements of where we follow the IT Act, which is a central government law. And the second one, as I said, in your list of things that you have shared, we can share anything as per applicable law and valid legal order. So I can come back to you once I check what is it that I can share.
Just give us some examples for us to understand.
Yeah, you're asking for
the kind of content that is to be removed, the kind of content that is not to be removed, and the kind of content which is not to be removed, but the eyeballs, there needs to be a reduction in the virality element of that post.
Respected Chair, you raise a very important point. If you allow me a minute, you're referring to the community standards in-depth knowledge. We do run a lot of community standard training programs, including with political parties, because we have run training programs with many political parties in the country, including yourselves, where we actually educate members on the usage of our platform in line with the community standards. So we have done that, and I'm happy to share the public document on community standards with you for your consideration.
Mr. Togral, in February 2020, were there any grievance officers in the company?
Respected member, I said we've always had a grievance officer. It is only that in 2021, the rules came where the grievance officer had to be located in India.
So there was no grievance official in February 2020?
Sir, I just said there was a grievance officer. The person was not located in India. The grievance officer's details were public, and you could write to the grievance officer to get your issues redressed.
Is it correct that you appointed grievance officers only after your immunity was withdrawn by the government under IT Act?
With due respect, that's I don't agree with that framing, because the IT rules required us to appoint a grievance officer in India. Until before that, there was no requirement to have a grievance officer. We always had a grievance officer. In 2021, as per the rules, we appointed a grievance officer physically located in India.
Did your civil society partners interview or inquire with the victims of the Delhi riots that happened in the month of Feb 2020?
Respected Chair, Delhi riots is an issue on which I would exercise my right not to comment.
No, it's a simple question. We are not transgressing law and order in any form. That is not the intent, that may not be the powers of this committee. I am on a very fine and a limited point of whether the civil society partners with whom you associate, whose principal responsibility, as I understand, is to flag violative content to you, did they ever, and if yes, how many of them with whom did they interact as far as the victims are concerned, the victims of the Delhi riots? I'm pretty sure an exercise like this would have been undertaken.
Yeah, as I said, Respected Chairperson, the instance that you're referring to pertains to a law and order situation. As far as if you want to know how we work with civil society partners, I've already shared that with you. As far as the specific instance is concerned of the incident that you're talking about, that is where I would like to exercise my right not to answer anything further as per the judgment.
Now, Facebook in its report has stated that on the basis of your experience with regard to the violence in Myanmar and Sri Lanka, your findings have enabled you to focus on reducing the spread of borderline content that has the potential to amplify tensions. Can you give us an account of, the removing of such borderline content during the course of the Delhi riots and after the Delhi riots 2020?
Respected Chairperson, as I said, this issue is a matter of law and order investigation, ongoing investigation, and I would, with due respect, reserve my right not to answer any question on this specific instance.
The Honorable Supreme Court, Mr. Tukral, in para 211 of this judgment, while highlighting the powers of the Legislative Assembly and its committee, says, the complexity of communal tension and their wide-ranging ramifications is a matter affecting citizens of Delhi, and it cannot be said that the government of NCT of Delhi cannot look into these casual factors in order to formulate appropriate remedial measures. Appropriate recommendations made by the state government in this regard could be of significance in collaborative effort between the center and the state to deal with governance issues. So we are not on law and order. The Supreme Court is also has reinforced that the committee has all the powers to understand the issue, to pick up the information that you give and apply to issues and entries that are beyond 1, 2, and 18 of list 1. So please help us understand this. It'll, by stonewalling my questions or by reserving your right to reply, you're frustrating the objective of this committee. My humble suggestion and request to you would be to kindly answer.
Respected Chair, that is not my intent. That is not our intent. There are certain boundaries which I understand. Because of the Supreme Court judgment, I'm only exercising my right within that. I'm happy here to explain, as I have over the last 2 hours, everything that we do to ensure hate speech is removed from our platform, everything that we do to make sure that users are empowered to connect or report problematic content on the platform. My humble submission to you is that these processes are the basis of where we are able to act on problematic content. When it comes to that specific issue, I've already stated my position on that, but anything that you would like to know, I'm happy to share and explain to you how our processes work, which will give you a lot more insight into the steps that we take to ensure hate speech is removed from the platform.
We would certainly like to understand these processes, but understand these processes vis-a-vis India. What Facebook India does for India, not a generic global answer of your general policy, what you intend to do, etc. What has been done and what you are likely to do in the Indian context.
Respected Chair, all our policies are applied consistently globally. I mean, we don't make any exception.
So if it is no specific policy for India?
As I said, we are a global platform, Respected Chair, and we make sure that our policies are applicable globally consistently. When there are local issues, as we said, we respect local law. We work with different arms of the society to make sure we are able to take into consideration which are local factors. I gave an example of community standards where we incorporated certain local inputs. So I would say it to be more complete in the articulation that I have been trying to convey is that we have multiple levers whereby we work in India with Indian organizations, Indian fact checkers, Indian civil society organizations, Indian law enforcement agencies, and Indian government partners. So I think we have very India-focused and India-specific measures as well, which I have enlisted. I'm happy to go over them again.
Okay, since the committee has failed to extract a definition of hate speech from you, and since you, of course, as the public policy head and who's so well versed with the functioning of Facebook, understand the meaning of hate speech, its community standards, etc. Please correct me if I'm wrong, that whether a post in the United States saying that African Americans are termites who have a conspiracy to take over the country and need to be exterminated, will this post be considered to be hate speech that would be immediately removed from the platform?
Respected Chairperson, as I said in the very beginning, I am a part of the public policy team. Hate speech, community standards, content policy related issues are not dealt by my team. We have a separate independent team which looks at these issues. Public policy team's role is to engage with stakeholders such as you, as well as different arms of the government and regulatory agencies. It is a separate independent team which looks at these issues, who are specialists, and they can provide more details on such issues.
Who are these people, these separate teams that you mentioned? Who would be the concerned person who can help us understand this in greater detail?
As I said, globally, the way we are structured, we have a content policy team, which is independent from the public policy team in terms of its operations and the way they look at subject matter expertise. And they are based out of across the world, and they are the ones who take these considerations.
Is there a content policy team for India?
As I said, some of these issues are related to internal policies. I can submit all the details as per applicable law with you.
So please let us know whether there is a content policy team for India, whether there is a content policy team in India, and if yes, what are the roles and responsibilities of the team and the office bearers, the composition of the team. But just for my the understanding of the committee, Mr. Tukral, what is your prima facie view vis-a-vis that one sentence that I just quoted? Would this sentence or would this post be considered to be hate speech in the United States? I can repeat it if you want. African Americans are termites who have a conspiracy to take over the country and need to be exterminated. This is one post allegedly put by a person on your platform. Would you consider this to be hate speech and remove this?
Respected Chair, I am not here to state my personal opinion. I am here to represent the company, and I'm not the person who deals with content-specific issues on the platform.
What was the reason, Mr. Tukral, what was the reason of withdrawing your immunity by the government?
Respected member,
either your public policies was failed in India, or you did not take prompt action qua certain incidents. Was that the reason?
Respected member, I'm not aware of anything which pertains to what you just stated. We are part of the intermediary ecosystem, and we abide by the IT Act.
Are you still enjoying the immunity?
These are matters related to the IT Act. It is my understanding that we are compliant with the provisions of the IT Act.
No, a person with the legal knowledge sitting beside you, are you still enjoying the immunity under the Act?
We are still operating in the country as per the applicable laws.
My question is, are you still enjoying the immunity or not?
Respected member, we are in compliance with the IT Act, and the provisions flow from that.
Does Facebook follow any kind of gradation on types of hate speech?
Respected Chair, hate speech is covered within our community standards. I'm happy to share all the details about how our hate speech rules work. When you talk about gradations, I'm not clear about the details on gradation, but I'm not the one who decides this. but I'm happy to share the public document which is available on community standards.
If a decision is taken to remove a certain hateful content from your platform, what is the procedure to file an appeal for such a decision?
As per the laws of the land, every user has a right to file an appeal on our platform.
And then what happens after that, after the filing of the appeal?
The appeal is considered by the relevant teams and issues taken into account, including the reasons that the user may have given.
Which team is this?
This is also the content policy team.
The content policy team.
Yes.
Okay, so the content policy team is certainly required to answer a lot of questions that we have today, which you may not have been able to answer, Mr. Thukral. So we're 20 minutes past the 2:30 p.m. deadline that we had set for ourselves. So therefore, we will conclude today's session with you. And the committee will, of course, appropriately decide whether we need your assistance and your participation before this committee at a later point in time or not. And if we do, we would certainly request you to kindly appear again. And we will also go through the answers that you've given to us and try and see if there are other teams and other members in your office, in your organization that are competent to answer. Or if you can find those answers for us and appear before this committee to help us understand the functioning and the integral nuances of your organization.
Thank you so much, Respected Chair. Thanks for this opportunity. I just wanted to clarify one thing. Yes, as I've said, as far as your requests on documents are concerned, we will go by the applicable law and valid legal orders. As far as issues, a lot of these issues, respected members has also asked, put into the Central Act, which is the IT Act. We are governed by that as well. So again, I just wanted to be very clear that I'm stating that up front, to make sure that intermediaries being a part of the central government remit, I just wanted to make sure that I'm doing the right thing here.
We are not here to regulate the intermediaries. That is not the intent. We do not want to venture into law and order, police, land. These are excluded entries. We very well understand this, and that is not the focus, whether or not they're excluded, of this committee. Our limited point is to understand the working of your organization. The Supreme Court, in its judgment in Ajit Mohan others versus the Legislative Committee, the Legislative Assembly of Delhi, has highlighted the powers, the competence, the remit, the jurisdiction of this committee. And I would really urge you that you do consult able lawyers, and you have access to a host of them before you decide not to share an answer or the documents asked by this committee.
Absolutely. And Respected Chair, with your permission, I would like to leave this behind. These are some of the issues that I was referring to, which pertain to our safety guidelines and the measures that we take to check. And there are many more in the public domain, and happy to share that.
Sure, you can most certainly leave that at the table. Thank you, Mr. Thukral. Thank you.
Thank you so much to the committee. Thank you. Thank you, respected members.
देखिए, आज दिल्ली विधानसभा की शांति सद्भाव समिति, जिसे कमिटी ऑन पीस एंड हार्मनी कहा जाता है, उस कमिटी के सामने फेसबुक के दो आला अधिकारी, दो बड़े अफसर पेश हुए थे, जिनमें से एक हैं श्री शिवनाथ थुकराल, जो फेसबुक के पब्लिक पॉलिसी हेड हैं, इंचार्ज हैं, और उनके साथ साथ उनकी एक जनरल काउंसिल, एक वकील जो फेसबुक के साथ काम करती हैं, वो पेश हुई थी। करीब 2.5 घंटे की सवाल जवाब उनके साथ हुआ। कई महत्वपूर्ण विषयों पर आज शांति सद्भाव समिति ने फेसबुक से सवाल किए। हेट स्पीच को लेकर सवाल करे, मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन को लेकर सवाल करे, फेसबुक के क्या क्या मैकेनिज़म्स हैं जिसके तहत वो किसी भी प्रकार का हेट स्पीच कंटेंट, हेटफुल कंटेंट जिससे सांप्रदायिक सद्भाव बिगड़े, शांति बिगड़े, ऐसे कंटेंट्स के बारे में फेसबुक क्या क्या कदम उठाता है, कैसे उन्हें रोकता है, कैसे उन्हें हटाता है अपने प्लेटफॉर्म से, और क्या उसे लागू करने में एक निष्पक्ष भाव से एक पूरी इंडिपेंडेंट एक्सरसाइज करी जाती है, या कहीं ना कहीं कोई इन्फ्लुएंस से शिकार होकर ये एक्टिविटी करी जाती है। इन विषयों पर काफ़ी डिटेल में चर्चा हुई।
एक बात मैं कहना चाहूँगा कि जिस तरह से राघव चड्ढा ने तथ्य सामने रखे, वो एक मजे खिलाड़ी की तरह नज़र आए, और फेसबुक के जो प्रतिनिधि आए हुए थे मिस्टर ठुकराल, वो कई बार झेप भी गए, जवाब नहीं दे पाए, जवाबों को गोलमोल किया। कैमरामैन रजनीश के साथ मैं देवेंद्र चोपड़ा, V3 न्यूज़ पर।